Hello students, this is Dr. Manisha Saini, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Government College, Kosli. In this lecture, we are going to discuss soil as the abiotic factor of the environment. So let's get started. So the abiotic factors include the non-living physico-chemical factors of the environment. They are divided into following categories: the edaphic factors and the climatic factors. The edaphic factors comprise the soil and the topography, whereas the climatic factors include the water, atmosphere, wind, temperature and light. So we are going to discuss soil as an edaphic factor in this lecture. First of all, how will you define soil? So soil is a surface layer of land. It is a single factor, but it is a complex of several other components which are collectively called the soil complexes. According to Schimper's second law, the distribution of plants in a region is determined chiefly by the nature of the soil, directly or in relation to other factors. So soil is the thin layer of material that covers the earth's surface, and it is majorly formed by weathering of rock. It is majorly composed of mineral particles, organic materials, air, water and living organisms. All of these interact slowly but constantly in the soil. Soil provides substratum to the plants. So we can say that plants get their nutrients from the soil, and all the living organisms on the earth, they get their nutrient directly or indirectly from the plants. So in other words, we can also say that majority of the organisms get their nutrient from the soil. A variety of fauna and flora is supported by soil. Soil is a valuable source and it needs to be carefully managed because it can be easily destroyed or it can be easily washed away. Now, what is pedology? The science of study of soil is called as pedology. The formation of soil takes place in two stages: weathering of rocks and mineralization and humification, which is also called as the pedogenesis. So weathering of rocks it is a slow and gradual and continuous process which result in the breakdown of parent rock by means of physical, chemical or biological processes. Now what is physical weathering? It is caused by various mechanical forces that act upon the rocks. For example, water present in the rock crevices gets frozen during cold weather during winters, and that expands. The force of expansion due to ice formation breaks up the rocks and thus helps in their withering. Similarly, heavy rainfall, hailstorm, fast flowing water, these are also responsible for physical withering. Chemical withering involves the carbonation and oxidation reduction reactions that occur inside the rocks. Hydrolysis is also an important process related to the chemical withering. The H positive and OH negative ion act on the silicates to produce the silicate clays. Now biological withering. Biological withering is brought about by the organisms that live inside the rocks. For example, the roots of plants, the microorganisms and lichens help in the process of withering. The microorganisms increase the solubility of manganese and iron salts by their reduction. Strong chelating action on the minerals is brought about by the organic acids secreted by the lichens. So all these three factors, that is physical withering, chemical withering and biological withering, they play a role in the breakdown of the parent rock. Now mineralization and humification, which is also called as pedogenesis. So the rocks are broken down into small pieces through different modes of withering, but it is not a true soil. So a true soil comprises of the inorganic and organic materials which are added to it by the process of mineralization and humification. So with the passage of time, the organic matter is added to the soil in the form of dead and waste remains. This organic matter is then decomposed by various microorganisms into simple organic compounds. Further decomposition of these compounds release water carbon dioxide and minerals, the incomplete decomposed organic matter which is left after mineralization is known as humus, and the formation is called as humification. Humus is also a source of nutrition for the microbes which live inside the soil. It provides the soil a loose texture and better aeration, and also has great capacity to imbibe the water. So there are different processes of soil formation. Soil formation can occur through leaching, alluviation, podzolisation and glaying. Now what is leaching? Leaching is the removal of soluble components of the soil column. As the water washes down through the soil, it carries away certain bases such as calcium, which is held as exchangeable ion in the clay humus complex, as well as acidification through the substitution of hydrogen ions. Alluviation. In alluviation, the soil particles which are held in suspension, such as clay, are washed away. In illuviation, the soil particles such as clay, which are held in suspension, are deposited. So the deposition of particles such as clay is called as illuviation, and the washing away is called as alluviation. Podzolisation occurs when strong acid solutions cause the breakdown of the clay minerals. As a result, silica, aluminium and iron form complexes with organic substances in the soil. These minerals are removed from the surface zone of the soil and can accumulate in distinct dark subsurface layers, which are very evident on inspection of the soil. So these different layers can be seen when we inspect a soil. Glaying. Glaying occurs in waterlogged anaerobic conditions when iron compounds are reduced and either removed from the soil or segregated out as mortars or concretions in the soil. Marshy wetlands often contain glayed soils. Now let's discuss the soil profile. What is soil profile? The vertical section of a soil from its surface to the underlying unwithered rock exhibits the presence of certain successive horizontal layers, one after the other. So all these layers combinedly form the soil profile. These layers of different thickness differentiated on the basis of color, texture, structure and chemical nature, and these are called as soil horizons. Normally the soil have four horizons called as O horizon, A horizon, B horizon and C horizon. There may be an R horizon below these which is consolidated bedrock. So first of all, O horizon. O horizon is the topmost surface layer and it is composed of partly decomposed organic matter which comprises loose fallen leaves, twigs, etc. It is well developed in forest and may be absent completely in grasslands. This can be further divided into two layers, O1 and O2 regions. O1 region contains the topmost layer of the dead organic matter, dead leaves, twigs, flowers, dead parts of animals, whereas O2 region, it is present below O1 and it has different stages of decomposition, and we cannot make a particular identity of it. Microorganisms like bacteria, actinomycetes, fungi are found in plenty in this region. Next is A horizon. A horizon is formed by soil aggregates. So humus rich topsoil where nutrient, organic matter and biological activities are at the highest, that comprises the A horizon. Topmost plant roots, earthworms, insects, microorganisms, these all are in the active form in this horizon. A horizon is usually darker in color but lighter in texture than other horizons of the soil, and that is because of the organic material present in it. It is again divided into three sublayers, A1, A2, A3 with decreasing amount of humus respectively. The B horizon comprises the clay-rich subsoil. This horizon is often less fertile than the topsoil, but it holds more moisture. So it is generally lighter in color but heavier in texture because of presence of the moisture in it. So it has a lighter color and less biological activity than the A horizon, but the texture is comparatively heavier. The C horizon comprises the underlying withered rock from which A and B horizon are formed. The C horizon is rich in moisture, yet negligible biological activity is there. And then the D horizon is the unwithered parent rock, which is impermeable and it is without any biological activity. The roots of plants are unable to penetrate this horizon. On the basis of the origin, the soil can be divided into two types, residual soil and the transported soil. Residual soil is formed by withering of the parent rock and it is formed at the site of the withering. So it is not transported anywhere else. It remains where the parent rock is lying. For example, the red soil and the black soil. Now the transported soil is brought from some other site of formation by different agents. These agents can be water, wind, glaciers, etc. So the transported soil is again of certain types. Colluvial soil, it is formed by transportation by gravitational pull, random assortment, and it is devoid of any stratification because it has random assortment. So there is no proper stratification in this soil. Alluvial soil is formed by deposited by running water. So it is round and smooth and it is formed along the rivers. It is found along the rivers. So you can understand that it is formed by the running water, deposition of the running water along the rivers in deltas, and it is highly productive. The example of alluvial soil is Indo-Gangetic Plain and the Sundarban deltas in India. Now next is glacial soil. Glacial soil is formed by grinding action of snow and ice. Aeolian soil is formed in the form of dunes or loess and it is transported by wind. So the particle size is uniform but it is not of agricultural use. It is not rich in nutrient and it is not productive. Next is soil texture. So the soil particles vary in size and on the basis of their size, the soil particles can be divided into following categories. First is clay. The clay comprises of the less than 0.002 mm size particle and these are colloidal particles, so they tend to coalesce together in the presence of water. Then again the next type is silt. The silt comprises of the particle size between 0.002 to 0.02 millimeter particle size. Fine sand comprises the 0.02 to 0.2 millimeter particle size. Coarse sand has comparatively large particle size and it has 0.2 to 2 mm particle size. Then stone and gravel comprises of the particles which are above 2 millimeter in diameter. So on the basis of composition of different particle size, the soil can be divided into four types: sandy soil, clayey soil, salty soil and loamy soil. Sandy soil comprises of 85% sand and 15% clay and silt. It is a light soil with high porosity and it has less water holding capacity and high temperature fluctuations. So it is suitable for xerophytic plants and it is considered as less fertile. Then clayey soil. Clayey soil has 50% clay and 50% silt. It is a cold or heavy soil. It has high water holding capacity but it does not allow easy penetration of roots. So it is also considered as less fertile. Then salty soil. Salty soil has 90% of silt and 10% of sand. It has great porosity and water holding capacity but has poor nutrient supply. So it is also less productive, or we can say less fertile. Then loamy soil. Loamy soil is productive, is the best soil for plant growth as it has 70% sand and 30% clay or silt or both. So it has good water holding capacity, it is nutrient rich and it has adequate aeration So it is considered as the best soil for plant growth and it is highly productive. So the soil has various minerals, organic matters and certain other components that combinedly form a soil or make its identity. So first of all, the minerals. The minerals are also called as the biogenic nutrients, and these are essential for proper growth of organisms. So the type and distribution of plants and animals in a soil are determined by a specific distribution of minerals in it. Deficiency or absence or excess of minerals can result in abnormal growth or even death of organisms. So the minerals, on the basis of mineral composition, the soil can be divided into two types: oligotropic soil and eutrophic soil. Oligotropic soil has the suboptimum concentration of minerals in the soil solution, whereas the eutrophic soil has almost optimum concentration of minerals in the soil solution. Now next is the organic matter. The organic matter is added by decomposition of plants and animals and their remains and their excreta. The organic matter is found up to 20 to 30 centimeter below from the top surface of the soil. So it is present in the form of litter, duff or humus. The litter comprises of the undecomposed organic matter which is formed of dead plant material which is fallen on the floor. Duff is partially composed organic matter and it is added by saprophytic action of actinomycetes, fungi and bacteria. The humus is the fully decomposed and finally divided dark organic matter. Chemically it contains carbohydrates, sugar alcohols, lipids, tannins, resins, lignins, amino acids, alkaloids, purine, pyrimidines, etc. It contains around 60% carbon, 30 to 40% oxygen and about 5% hydrogen and roughly 5% nitrogen. The formation of humus is called as humification, whereas the breaking of humus into minerals, carbon dioxide and water is called as mineralization. So both, as we discussed earlier, both mineralization and humification are part of soil formation. Next is the soil water. Soil water is very important than other ecological factors in distribution of plants because plants require water for meeting the metabolic and transportational needs, soil fauna, flora and the process of humification. They all depend on the soil water. Soil water is majorly derived from rain. The rainwater occurs in different forms. The runaway water, which is rain from the soil surfaces along the slope, and it is also called as the runoff water. Its amount depends upon the soil permeability, moisture, degree of slope and number of ditches. The gravitational water is the amount of water which percolates downward under the force of gravity. This phenomenon is called as percolation and it finally reaches the water table beneath the earth's surface. Capillary water is the water held by the capillary action between the soil particles and its micropores. This is the best form of water available to the plants. Hygroscopic water is the water held by soil colloids tightly adsorbed on their surface. It is non-available to plants. The amount of hygroscopic water held by 1 millimeter thick layer of soil at constant temperature is called the soil's hygroscopic coefficient. Now combined water. Combined water is the small quantity of water which remains chemically bound to the soil substance. It is known as the combined water and it is also not available to the plants. So the total amount of water which a soil can retain per unit of its dry weight after the gravitational percolation is called as the water holding capacity or field capacity of the soil. The amount of water present in the soil is called as holloid. The amount of water which is available to the plants is called as crescent, and that water which is not available is known as ecard. Now next component of soil is the soil air. Soil air is present in the pores of the soil and it is necessary for respiration of roots and soil flora and fauna. If the soil is not waterlogged, its pores partly contain water and partly air. So the soil air is slightly rich in carbon dioxide but poorer in oxygen. That is due to the respiratory activities of underground plants and microorganisms. The oxygen of soil air is very important in controlling the soil fertility because it is required by humus forming microorganisms, nitrogen fixing bacteria and other soil organisms such as earthworms which increase the soil fertility. So it is also required for the seed germination and development and growth of the roots, absorption of water and minerals by the roots and respiration of underground parts like rhizomes, tubers, bulbs, etc. Pore space ratio is the ratio to the volume of the pores to the total volume of the soil. Now next component of the soil is soil organisms. The organisms found in the soil are divided into three or four categories. The fauna, majorly we can say that there are two categories, the fauna and the flora. So the macrofauna, it includes the animals like large living organisms on the surface of the soil like rabbits, rats, moles. These live partly or wholly inside the soil. So we can say the organisms which make a burrow inside the soil, they comprise the macrofauna of the soil. Now the mesofauna. Mesofauna includes the arthropods, for example beetles, termites, centipedes, millipedes, annelids such as earthworm, nematodes and mollusks. These comprise the mesofauna of the soil. Then microflora and microfauna. The microflora comprises the algae, fungi and the microfauna comprises the bacteria and protozoans. So the algal components mainly include the blue-green algae. These perform the different functions, for example the nitrogen fixation in the soil by free living azotobacter, clostridium etc. Decomposition of the organic matter leading to the humification. The earthworm, millipedes, slugs, snails, insect larvae etc. they all help in the soil aeration, nutrient cycling, pedogenesis, that is the formation of the soil, and they bring the subsoil to the surface, so improve the aeration of the soil. They also produce the antibiotic, that is the toxins which are produced in some of the soil, so they help in combating these toxins. So this was all about the soil as an abiotic factor and how it affects the living organisms which are present in that particular environment. Thank you for listening.